that Doddy's given me something to fight for. He's made me go, right, if he can do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to fight, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to do all the things that Doddy's done. His mental strength was his best bit about Doddy.
Doddy's former teammate and friend Kenny Logan joins me to talk about the 700-mile endurance event aimed at raising money for MND. And what do you make of this?
My daughter says she doesn't want me to walk her down the aisle, so I'm refusing to pay for the wedding. Am I being unreasonable?
The Court of Karen, back in session. Remember, you are the jury. We want to hear from you. What do you think about that? 80295. And it's Alcohol Awareness Week this week, but do we need to change the way that we view alcohol dependency? We'll talk about that a little bit later in the programme. Plus...
How you like that?
As the first band of the genre headline a UK festival that is K-pop, we're asking what is so good about it?
All the conversations that matter.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
Thank you so much, by the way, everyone who got in contact with us for the phone in. I just want to read this text out. Going to A&E in the US, first person who sees the cashier even before you see a triage nurse. Laura says, why do we need to pay, or why don't we pay like the Republic of Ireland does? Means tested for everyone. What do you think? Keep your thoughts on the NHS coming in. I will pepper a few of them across the morning. 80295. Let's kick this hour off with Holiday though by Madonna.
One day out of life, it would be
Holiday by Madonna. You're listening to BBC Radio Scotland. It is 10:10. I hope you're doing well on this Wednesday morning. Now, you might remember that this week would have marked the 53rd birthday of Doddie Weir, the Scottish rugby legend who died in November after living with motor neuron disease for 6 years. There's been an inspiring amount of work being done since then to raise money for his charity, the Doddie Weir Foundation. And I'm pleased to say I'm now joined by Doddie's old teammate and friend, Kenny Logan. Morning, Kenny.
Morning, how are you?
I'm really good, thanks. I hear that
Good.
you're organising one of the most ambitious events yet for the charity. Tell me about it.
I don't know if I started the idea of thinking I was going to walk to Paris, and I thought that was going to take me ages. And I thought I need to try and do it quicker, so I thought I'll do walking and cycling. So we leave on the 1st of October from BT Murrayfield, heading to Paris for the Scotland Rugby World Cup game against Ireland. So we cycle, walk all the way there. There'll be about 20 of us, I think, maybe even up to 30 by the time we get. Some people are going to join us as we head down the country. So, yeah, Kenny Logan's Rugby World Cup Challenge is the name of it. And obviously
Catchy.
hoping to raise as much money as we can for the foundation.
Tell us then who's going to be involved and have you thought this through?
Well, I haven't. Somebody did a recce about a month ago to the people doing this sort of to make sure we get the right path, right road, and the right walking areas. And he said it's very hard, Kenny. And he was an SES guy, and I was like, oh my god.
That's not what you want to hear,
So
is it?
it's starting to hit home a little bit now. It's going to be quite a challenge, but you need to do these things to raise awareness, and I'm looking forward to it. The only bit I'm worried about is I don't know if you see the new bikes nowadays. I've got a Specialized bike, and the seat is like a razor blade. And I think, how can I sit in that for 7 hours a day? But seemingly you can do it.
Do you think as well sometimes that, especially whenever you are trying to raise money for something that's really important to you, and particularly this for you, and we'll get into why that is in just a second. But is it becoming more and more difficult to find new ways to push yourself and new challenges? Because it seems like there's only so many ways that you can do challenges like this, but it's remarkable how many people can be creative when it comes to trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think you've got to be creative with it, but you've also got to make it reasonably enjoyable, and it has to, you want to take people on the journey with you. It's not always about me doing it. I've got other people, so Jason Fox is doing it. He won't need to train at all. Jamie Bamber is an actor, a good friend of mine. Gabby's going to do some of it. Kirsty Gallagher's going to do some of it. Johnny Barclay, I think, is going to do some. Alan McCoy says he's going to do the whole lot.
Wow.
So that's exciting.
Has he started his training already?
Well, he said he's training, but I don't believe him. He says he's doing some. But the walking, the hard bit is the muscle shape, because if you're on a bike every day, you get used to cycling. But then going from the bike to walking 25 miles the next day, and then back to 100 miles on the bike, it's going to be quite challenging and different on the body. So I don't really know what that's going to feel like. I've done a couple of training runs, and I've done 16 miles, and then went on the bike the next day for 2 hours, and it felt okay. But you've got to do 100 miles on the bike and maybe 20 miles walk the next day. So it is going to be quite hard on the body. But I think it'll be good fun, and we're taking the World Cup match ball to the game, and Kathy, Doddie's wife, and I are going to take the ball onto the pitch and hand the ball over. So that'll be something to keep ourselves focused on. But it will be, if the weather's good again, if the weather's going to be all right, it'll be easier. But if the weather's bad, it's going to be a lot harder, especially the walking in the rain. But listen, it's a challenge, and that's what it's all about. So I'm looking forward to it.
I suppose that crystallises and focuses, particularly for what we're talking about today, why you're doing this idea of what happens at the end, and Kathy being there and everything else. And just going back to that it's Doddie's 53rd birthday or this week. And we tend to love or miss our loved ones, don't we? More when it comes to these big milestones, things that you wish that they'd been there for, things that they'd been part of. How's that been feeling this week for you?
I get reasonably emotional with Doddie, because he was the one. You sometimes, I played with Doddie in 2 World Cups. He did 3 World Cups, and so did I. I missed he did one before me, and World Cups are special because you spend a lot of time together. And, you know, Doddy was somebody who was very special to me, but also to a lot of other people. He was inspiring individual anyway, but then when he got M&D, he sort of showed the rest of the world that, you know, he was a phenomenal way how he drove the foundation and the disease globally to try and make an impact. And, you know, most people know the problem with the disease is underfunded, and he was going to change his mindset on that. And I think really quite quickly, Doddy realised that it wasn't about him, it was about all the other people with M&D, or people who will get M&D after he passes. And I think the foundation has gone from strength to strength since, you know, Doddy's passing, and there's a real determination between people who are involved in it and people who are fundraising to be part of this cure and be part of the legacy that he started. So I think that's one of my main focuses. That, you know, he did say to me, you know, not a couple of months, he said, remember and just keep focusing on finding that cure and then make an impact in this disease. You know, and he didn't want anybody to walk away from it. So I think everybody's galvanised around it to try and be part of that story. And that's what, you know, he was a good friend of mine. You know, he's a good friend of a lot of people who knew him closely, his family. And the determination with everybody is just so strong to try and find this cure or something that can make an impact.
That's one thing that I think that's been really clear from since Doddy was diagnosed and since the inception of the charity, and then even after his death, just this idea of how strong he was. And was that something that when I know he supported you during your own cancer diagnosis, what was that like, and you know, how did that conversation go?
So I didn't really tell anybody about that. I kept it quite quiet because I wanted to deal with it myself, and I didn't want the attention around it because I just wanted to. I'd rather talk about it after when I'd gone through the process. But Doddy was a bit annoyed I hadn't told him, but I didn't really want to tell him because it was, you know, the thing. And getting it back to being underfunded, cancer has got a lot of money. You know, they've got a lot of money for research, and they find amazing research. They get for cancer, and people have got, like me, who had prostate cancer. I was very lucky, but and Doddy's not lucky. He wasn't lucky at all. You've got a disease that there's nothing there for you. So I felt a little bit, I didn't really want to tell him for that reason, because I was the lucky one, and he, you know, everybody deserves a bit of luck, and he got dealt a really bad card with the M&D. So he was a bit annoyed I hadn't told him. He gave me a bit of a, he said, why have you not told me? You should have told me. I was like, I didn't want to worry you. I didn't want to, you know, I just felt a bit, I felt lucky the fact that I'd, the disease, not disease, but the cancer I had was pretty much curable if you got it at the right time. So, but that, again, that drives you on. You're lucky, how lucky I am, and how lucky a lot of people are who've managed to. The research is there for the disease, and where M&D, the research has really just started really in the last 7 or 8 years. I mean, I know that people have been working hard on it, but the fundings really came in with the likes of Rob Burrows and Ed Slater and Doddy, giving the disease such an impact and an opportunity to try and make an impact on everybody else's lives. So, yeah, it does make me. I mean, Doddy was a very inspiring individual. You know, he must have had some dark days. He never ever told me about his dark days, but he must have had them. But he never ever saw them. That was the amazing thing about him. He was always up for it and always cheering, always asking how you were. You know, and I suppose that always sits in the back of my mind, thinking about him.
Did he give you any advice?
Doddy's advice was probably not repeatable. Yeah, no, I didn't really give you advice. He led by example. You know, I remember when he pulled everybody together in the first meeting they had with all the different scientists and professors. He basically just used the analogy of rugby, but pulling people together and all working together. And if we don't work together, it's not about you finding it and me, you know, one professor finding the cure. It's about us working together and all finding it together and being part of the story. So, and he basically pulled 10 to 15 professors who hadn't really worked together that much over the years, and he pulled them together, and that was the legacy of the foundation. It was all about pulling people together to try and find that one inspirational moment of a cure or an impact, a tablet that does make an impact on the M&D. Because there's not really a tablet really in the last 25 years. So, and they're definitely getting closer and closer with the foundation support. So they do believe they'll find something in the next 5-6 years.
Well, you
So it's
said,
important that we keep raising players.
yeah, and I think that's important for a lot of people to see that there's, you know, developments and there's headway being made with that as well.
Yeah.
Just going back to the challenge, as you say, it's all culminating in that first game of the Rugby World Cup itself in Paris. Let me ask you, if I can, just about the tournament itself. Then, are you looking forward to it? What do you think Scotland's chances are?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Scotland are great Six Nations, and obviously Gregor's staying for another couple of years, which is good. That settles the team. Got a lot of great players. I'm excited. We are in a really hard group. You know, it's a group of death by a country mile compared to any other group. You know, we've got New Zealand, we've got South Africa, we've got Ireland. So we've got the top 2 teams in the world in the group, and we're the top 5 team. We're number 5 in the world, and then you've got Tonga, who have got a lot of good players coming back into that team. So they're going to be a hard group to get out of. But the game against Ireland will be a big crunch game. I think Scotland can beat Ireland or South Africa. I don't think we can beat both of them, but I think we'll beat one of them. And then it's up to points and bonus points. So it is going to be a hard tournament. And that whole group, that whole side, you've got New Zealand, you've got France on the same side of the group. So it's a really hard group to get out. But if you look at England and Australia and Argentina, they've got such an easy way to the semi-finals, really. Nothing really, no big team in the top 5 on their side of the group. So I think the big thing that's come out of this World Cup is the seedings. What normally happens is that after the last World Cup, they take the top 8 teams and they seed them for the following World Cup. And it really should be done 2 years or a year and a half out for the seedings to get the best teams to the last 4. You want the best teams in the last 4 of the tournament. But it's going to be a hard tournament, but it's exciting. It's on a doorstep. The French, and if you watch French rugby, the crowds are amazing, the atmosphere is great. So I think it'll be as good a World Cup as we've ever had. Obviously, France are going through little problems at the moment, but in general, I think it'll be a great World Cup. And Scotland have got as much chance as anybody, but it'll be really tough. And I think it's hard for, if Gregor doesn't get out of the group, people are going to judge him on it. But I think we have to think about how far the team's coming and what is. We also got to be realistic. We are in the top 5 in the world. And sadly, we're going to have to pay number 1 in the world and number 2 in the world to get out of the group, which is not normal.
That's going to make it even better, though, whenever they do get out of the group. That's the way to think about it.
I think, genuinely, I think they can get out of the group.
Yeah.
I really think they can beat Ireland. And this is the Ireland game we're bringing the ball to could be the decider Scotland might have to win that game by 5 points to knock Ireland out or South Africa. And I think the World Cups I've played in, the 3 World Cups I've played in, you have 2 big games in the World Cup, and then the rest of the games are reasonably, you're going to win them, and then you get out into the 3 quarterfinals. We played the All Blacks, and every one of them, and it was really hard to then, and they got to finals or semi-finals. So, but we've got a team now that can beat the top teams in the world, and that's we've never had that, so we can do it. I think. Also, Gregor's got that team for 3 months, working on tactics, working on fitness. All these teams going into the World Cup will be the fittest you've ever seen. There'll be their skill level, their diet, everything will be the best.
Yeah, the peak.
So that's the exciting thing, Scotland team.
Well, we look forward to that. You look forward to that. And listen, Kenny, all the best for the challenge. I hope it all goes to plan.
Yeah, thank you, and I really appreciate everybody's support for the foundation and for the challenge. And if anybody can get a chance to go to Kenny Logan Rugby World Cup Challenge, that'd be great. And I really appreciate everybody's support.
Yeah, and if you want to, then that's where you can donate, and also you can find Kenny on Instagram as well. Right, listen, Kenny, have a good day, enjoy it.
Thank you, have a great day. Thanks for having me on.
No problem.
Take care.
That was Kenny Logan there, as he said, the Rugby World Cup Challenge. You can find that to donate, or he's on Instagram as well. Right, and it is 10:24.
It's the soundtrack to your parties, to your festivals, and hanging out with your friends and family.
The sunnier the weather, the sunnier the music.
Summer music is all about good times and remembering those great holidays of the past.
Getting the barbecue on and getting the tunes on, I can't wait.
Great festivals and get-togethers across the country.
It's feeling like you're part of a cultural moment.
And well, when music and the summer collide together once again, grab your favourite people and enjoy the ride. Nights made for runaways. Oh, we're gonna miss these days.
summer nights on your smart speaker and on BBC Sounds.
A whole mix of genres.
It all begins when you play BBC Radio Scotland.
And you're listening to Mornings with me, Connie McLaughlin, on BBC Radio Scotland. Coming up, it is Alcohol Awareness Week. Do we need to change our view on alcohol dependency? And
I bring the pain like
as Blackpink become the first K-pop act to headline a UK festival, we're asking what's the appeal of the genre and how did it get so big?
Got something to say? Text 80295. Standard message rates apply.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
If you're thinking, what's K-pop? Don't worry, we'll sort you out. We'll tell you all you need to know after the Proclaimers.
I need you, boo. I gotta see you, boo. And the hearts all over the world tonight. Said the hearts all over the world tonight. I need you, boo. Oh, I gotta see you, boo. And the hearts all over the world tonight. Said the hearts all over the world tonight. Hey, little mama, ooh, you're a stunner. Hot little figure, yes, you a winner. And I'm so glad to be yours. You're a class, all you're running. Ooh, little cutie, when you talk to me, I swear the whole world stops. You're my sweetheart, and I'm so glad that you're mine. You are one of a kind, and you mean to me what I mean to you. And together, baby, there is nothing we won't do. 'Cause if I got you, I don't need money, I don't need cars. Girl, you're my own. And oh, I'm into you, and girl, no one else would do. 'Cause with every kiss and every hug, you make me fall in love. And now I know I can't be the only one. I bet it's hearts all over the world tonight. With the love of their life, who feels what I feel when I'm with you, with you, with you, with you, with you, girl. With you, with you, with you, with you, with you. Oh girl, I don't want nobody else. Without you, there's no one left. And you like Jordans on Saturday. I gotta have you and I cannot wait now. Hey little shorty, say you care for me. You know I care for you. You know that I'll be true. You know that I won't lie. You know that I will try to be your everything, yeah. 'Cause if I got you, I don't need money, I don't need cars. Girl, you're my all, yeah, yeah. I'm into you, and girl, no one else would do. 'Cause with every kiss and every hug, you make me fall in love. And now I know I can't be the only one. I can't be the only. I bet it's hearts all over the world tonight. With the love of their life, who feels what I feel when I'm with you, with you, with you, with you, with you. Oh, with you, with you, with you, with you, with you. Yeah, and I will never try to deny that you are my whole life. 'Cause if you ever let me go, I would die. So I won't run, I don't need another woman. I just need you all or nothing. 'Cause if I got that, then I'll be straight. Baby, you're the best part of my day. I gotta see you, boo. And the hearts all over the world tonight. Say the hearts all over the world tonight. Boo, yeah. They need it, boo. They need it. They gotta see they boo. Say the hearts all over the world tonight. Hearts all over the world tonight. Oh, I'm into you,
And guess what? She's back. Time for another conundrum with our judgmental friend of the show, Karen McKenzie. Every week we deal with one of life's minor irritations, a conundrum guaranteed to divide and even grind your gears. Karen always has an opinion, but you are the jury and you get the final verdict on this. Morning, Karen.
Morning.
How are
I've come
you?
into studio and there's nobody here.
I know.
Not even you.
I know. I'm so sorry. I was just thinking that. I was thinking it was sad that I wasn't going to get to see you in person. I'm in Edinburgh, by the way, for you listening at home and you're wondering where I am. I'm not in my house.
Oh, would you come through? Actually, that's a lie.
Not today.
That is a lie. Yes.
Every road is closed in every direction. I think I'm going to have to crawl home just to make sure I get there. But yeah, you're better in Glasgow today, just making sure that you can do all the things you need to do. What have you been up to since I last saw you?
Oh, what have I been up to? I've been away in the camper van.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have been to Port Patrick. I've been to Dunkeld. I've actually been all over the place. It's been really nice. I can't remember when I just don't know. But do you know what? I've come home because the greenhouse is flourishing and I think even the neighbours are getting fed up of watering the plants for me. So I've come back. I thought I better come back and do some work myself.
Yeah, better get back to the working.
Yes.
By the way, also with us this morning is author and broadcaster Stuart Weir. Morning, Stuart.
Good morning to both of you.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah, well, I'm not in Glasgow or Edinburgh, so.
Well, I know you're not in Glasgow.
Where are you, Stuart?
I'm at home. I'm at home now. Yes, I know. I was when we were preparing for the show. I was in sunnier and more exotic climes, but not any longer. Having arrived back this morning in the early hours.
In the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night to wind and rain. What is this stuff you have here?
Well, it's sun split in the sky just now in Glasgow.
Not quite to the temperatures I was expecting.
No. Well, it sounds like you were somewhere exotic. I know exactly.
I know, my heart bleeds for you, Stuart.
Yeah, no sympathy, son. Sorry.
Right. Well, speaking of sympathy, you might have some for the person who is part of today's conundrum. Shall we have a wee listen?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
I'm a 48-year-old man and my 19-year-old daughter has always been an independent thinker, which I've always appreciated. However, she recently got engaged and decided she doesn't want me to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. She argues that her mother and I don't own her, therefore we have no right to give her away. I feel hurt by this because we never treated her like an object or piece of property. Rather, we've tried our best to provide her with a wonderful life. Her stance seems extreme to me, and despite discussions, she's refusing to budge on this issue. I respect her choices, but I feel she's disregarding our feelings completely. As a response, I told her that if she's insistent on this stance, she can pay for her own wedding. Am I being unreasonable?
Bravo to Lewis, by the way, for the amateur dramatics.
Yes.
I love that.
Bravo, Lewis.
Right, okay. Karen, where are you in this?
Oh, ouch. Well, it's an uncomfortable scenario, isn't it? But, I mean, really, these days, are we expecting our parents to fork out for the wedding? When he's been a bit churlish, I think, saying, she can pay for her own wedding if I'm not allowed to walk her down the aisle. She's an independent thinker. He said that he thinks that's, something that he's always respected. So was it really that much of a surprise that she's got this, thinking? So I think, no, I have to say, what am I saying? I mean, I'm mixed with this, but...
Are you lost for words,
yeah.
Karen McKenzie?
Yeah, I think... Oh, God. Yeah, sorry. I'm kind of like... I think he is being unreasonable.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Stuart?
Can we not just go for an unproven verdict here and move on to the next track?
No.
In between my pina coladas, I was giving this a bit of thought. I have two older daughters who are both married, and I walk both of them down the aisle quite happily. I have a younger daughter who will probably do it her way, whatever that might entail. I think that on this one, having read more of the story, and there's a part of the story that says, young women not wanting to be treated like cattle and being given away as if they're owned. Now, I would like to introduce one of the aforementioned ladies to one of the girls who's actually been walked down the aisle by her golden retriever. Now, what's that about? No, seriously,
I think that's quite sweet.
Well, I would think it was quite sweet as well. I mean, listen, I don't want to say it on air, but I mean, I dearly love my golden retriever, and my 3 daughters sometimes come a distant second to her.
I think that's fair.
You know we are on air.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. I thought it was a recording. Decided to cut it out. No, I mean, so Karen hummed and hawed about this one, and I was the same.
I know, and I have to say I've never done that before. I know I feel completely. So, Stuart, what are you saying?
Well, what I'm saying is that somebody, as my old gran would say, somebody's needing to bang their heads together on this one. And as much as I don't think they're looking to the future. I mean, one, I think that she's been, a bit churlish and thinking to the guy who's probably sponsored her, if you like, throughout her entire life.
Hang on. Sponsored her?
Yeah. Well, if you raise your children, you put them through school, maybe university.
Is that not your job?
Yeah, I think you've got an obligation there, Stuart.
Okay, you might well have, but then again, it comes to the sort of tradition of marriage and weddings, and the tradition always was that the father would give the bride away.
You're sounding a wee bit old-fashioned here now.
I might listen. At least I'm sounding like something you couldn't even give us an answer 5 minutes ago.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
I hold my hands up to that.
And on that point, I think looking forward in this one, this is something it seems like a good idea at the time, maybe on her part, and maybe he thinks he's getting one back on her. Trust me, at some point in the future, I reckon both of them might regret this, either in the stance of not allowing your dad to walk you down the aisle, and his stance of not paying for it. I think
is this more about? Here's my question to both of you, right? And this,
don't make it difficult. Don't make it difficult.
No, but this poses a bigger question, doesn't it, about what that represents? And if we can take away from the idea of it's about giving you away, is it not about like being there to support you? Because I'm thinking about my wedding a couple of years ago. I was side by side with my mum instead of my dad or my stepdad. I mean, I would have had my dog if I knew that was a thing, to be honest. But it was my mum and I, because I felt as if actually it was about the next step in your life and the person that means most to you. Now the other person that's the sort of main protagonist in your life, and at that transition to the next point, rather than actually anything to do with ownership.
No, I mean, I'm going from what the sort of gist of the story is, or the story was, and some of the points that were raised in that. I mean, listen, I will side wholly here with Karen. This is a debate that I've pondered for a couple of days, because I don't think there is an answer. Yes, she's entitled to have her wedding and do whatever she so wishes.
Yeah, because it is her day, Stuart, isn't it?
Correct. It is, absolutely.
And it's not about him.
No, I always remember that, and I think on that part, he is being selfish. You have to, in my opinion, you have to go with what your daughter or stepdaughter or whoever it might be actually wants from their day.
So he is being unreasonable. That's what we're in agreement about that.
I think he's been totally, unreasonable. But I do think that at some point in the future, even though she's single-minded and even though she's maybe have her own thoughts and different things, I honestly think it's someday when she reflects on her big day, she might have wanted him there, and certainly he will regret it forever if he doesn't actually contribute in some way, shape, or form.
But he'll be at the wedding. He's just not going to walk her down the aisle. I think that's just the point. He will take. Yeah, he'll be at the day.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, let me flip it again. You're going to be at the day and knowing that you're actually supposed to be there.
You're not supposed to be walking her down there. That is a bit archaic, don't you think?
Well, again, it's up to her. I would see it that right. I would see it as a parent or as a father that I'm not duty bound to do it, but I really would have liked that to be one of my highlights of my life, and I can say that with my 2 older daughters, even though I love my golden retriever.
Right, okay. And I'll go back to the original point. The jury out there is you at home. What do you think about this? Is the dad being unreasonable by saying, actually, I'm not going to pay for the wedding because he's not going to be able to walk his daughter down the aisle? 80295. I don't even know if this is about who you agree with, because I think we're all kind of saying, or you guys are saying the same thing in a way.
Oh God, are we? Right. Okay, I think it's supposed it's about money as well, isn't it? I suppose I'm thinking she can't have it both ways in a way, because I see that she's very independent. What I said at the beginning is, do parents really pay for a wedding these days? I think it's down to the couple to pay for the wedding, but also I suppose there's a contribution that does come from the parents. But I guess if her parents in a very old traditional way are paying for the entire thing, then maybe there's a bigger discussion to be had there.
Okay, thank you very much to both of you. We will reconvene after 11 o'clock, 80295. Do you agree with Karen? Do you agree with Stuart?
Or both?
Karen's saying the dad's been unreasonable, and that brings up that bigger point about the wedding payment and who should be paying for it. But Stuart's saying, well, actually, he still should pay, and he should still be able to walk her down the aisle. 80295. Do you agree with that? Right. It is 10:40 here in BBC Radio Scotland. Let's get some more music now. This is Queen and You're My Best Friend. By Queen just reminds me of what Stuart was saying there about the golden retriever walking you down the aisle. Is that something you would think about? 80295, by the way, if you've got a view on Court of Karen this week. Right, it's 43 minutes after 10. It is Alcohol Awareness Week. It kicked off on Monday. And this year's focus is cost, organised by Alcohol Change UK. The group want to get people considering the cost of alcohol, not just, I suppose, in financial terms, but also in terms of the cost of relationships, friends, career, that can all break down as a result of problem drinking. They are also campaigning for a change in the law to remove the exclusion of alcohol dependency in the Equality Act, something that they're really keen to make happen. So do we need to change the way we view and treat people with alcohol dependency issues? Here to discuss this in a little bit more detail is Isla Hashimadi, Director of Research and Public Affairs at Alcohol Change UK. Morning, Isla.
Morning.
And we've also got Kirsty Mulcahy, founder of Sober Buzz Scotland. Morning, Kirsty.
Good morning.
Thanks both of you for joining us. Isla, let me start with you. I guess the first and foremost, why did you choose costs as this year's topic?
Yeah, so The harm caused by alcohol affects millions of people every year in the form of health problems, financial worries, relationship breakdown, and family difficulties. It also brings with it huge societal costs as well, such as the significant pressure it places on the NHS, the emergency services, police, and workplaces. So we chose this topic this year to highlight these big issues. The total societal cost for alcohol is estimated to be at least £27 billion a year. In Scotland, that's £2.25 billion.
Wow.
Yes, and our recent survey also shows that drinkers spend around £63,000 on average on alcohol over the course of a lifetime. So we wanted to look at what are the costs of what are you gaining by spending this much money on alcohol as a drinker. So there's a lot of issues there.
So when you talk about that cost then, what was that Scottish figure, 2.2 billion, did you say?
2.25 billion pounds, that's the estimate.
2.25 billion. And what is that things like? Just everything, NHS? What does that consist of? Give us a bit of an idea.
Yeah, that's NHS Scotland, social work services, criminal justice, fire services, police services. Yeah.
That's an awful lot of money, isn't it? And so how do you go about, as an organisation, trying to change that? Where do you even start?
Well, we do have a very comprehensive strategy, as you'll be glad to know. But obviously, reducing alcohol harm is just such, as you said, it's such a complex problem. We look at issues such as, looking at what better policies and regulations governments can put into place, how we can shift our cultural norms. So how can we have a more informed and balanced drinking culture here in the UK? How can we improve our knowledge? So what's the research that's needed? What's the evidence that's needed to understand the effects of alcohol harm? How, can we improve drinking behaviours? How can we help people gain the motivation, confidence and ability to exert control over their drinking? Some of your listeners might have taken part in Dry January. That is a programme that is run by Alcohol Change UK. So there's loads of different things that we do. And we look at as a charity. As you can imagine, there's a lot there and we can't all do it ourselves. We do work with colleagues across the sector as well to try and change that.
The Alcohol Awareness Week itself used to be in November. You've changed it now to July. Is that because more people tend to drink in the summer?
Not really, no. As I said, we are the charity behind Dry January. And this date change gives us the opportunity to provide two distinct moments in the year for people to focus on their drinking and health. With Dry January taking place in January and Alcohol Awareness Week in July, that gives us two really clear touch points to talk to people about alcohol during the year. But as you said, there are particular challenges around summer as well. When the warmer weather sets in, some of us can find ourselves looking to socialise a little bit more and for something cool to enjoy while we're doing that. Also that sense of people being on holiday and letting their hair down and wanting to enjoy that. But we're here to talk about, enjoying the summer without having to deal with a hangover and all of the costs that we talked about before. So we're taking this opportunity to encourage people to think about what they gain from drinking less. Whether that's saving money, whether that's better health, energy, better sleep, better relationships. Just thinking about that during the summer time, as you said, can also be beneficial.
Kirsty, tell us a little bit about your relationship with alcohol and why you decided to change that.
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much for having me on. I knew for 14 years that I had a problem with alcohol from the age of 27, and I finally was able to stop at the age of 41. But I felt so ashamed by that. I felt that I was going to be judged. It felt very embarrassing to talk about it. There was a huge social stigma around not drinking, language such as, I don't trust people who don't drink. The thought of having to tell people that I wanted to take a break or to socialise without drinking all seemed too great. And it got to the point where I was so ashamed that I just didn't know how to bring that up. I was worried that maybe people would question my ability to be a parent. I am a mum. My ability to do the job that I'd done. I somehow managed to hold down a job. When I was 33, I lost my mum very, very suddenly, a very traumatic experience, and my drinking got completely out of control then. And I was at a stage where I didn't know where to start or who to speak to. And to hear Isla say there about we need to be informed and balanced and educate and motivate, that's everything we hope to do with Sober Buzz Scotland. Complete sobriety is my life choice. I'm delighted with that life choice. I've got a great life now. But there are ways that people can cut down or reduce their drinking. And I think we need to understand that it's not a lifestyle choice when people are alcohol dependent or abusing alcohol. It quite often comes from trauma, traumatic experiences, difficult life situations, and then people become so overwhelmed and don't know where to start. And these Dry January and Alcohol Awareness Week are fantastic to bring it to the forefront so we can start talking about it and remove the shame from saying, I'm not going to drink this weekend, or I'm not going to drink at all.
It's an interesting point, Isla, that Kirsty makes there about this idea of alcohol dependency and changing the views that people have around that. Is this part of why you're calling for change to the Equalities Act?
Absolutely. Like, I couldn't agree more with everything that Kirsty said. And it's something that we find is just so common for people. You know, we talk to people who've had alcohol dependency every day, and it's just so common, this kind of shame and stigma that people face. And yeah, so obviously most people will know that the Equality Act is there to protect people against discrimination. That, you know, predominantly what we've done with this is focus in the workplace. But it doesn't protect people with alcohol dependence. You know, Kirsty was saying, you know, she's now that she's in recovery, she is working, she's in the workplace. But the government have told us that they basically have an exclusion in the Equality Act for people who've had alcohol dependency because it's self-inflicted. Now, anybody who works with people with alcohol dependency will tell you that that is absolutely categorically not true. And, you know, as an organisation that is passionate about this issue, we think that this has huge negative implications for people with alcohol dependence in the workplace and, you know, the protections that they would face had they got, you know, rightly a mental health issue, whether they had a physical health, a disability, something to do with, you know, their race or religion. And we just think that it's unfair that this exclusion is there for people with alcohol dependency.
Kirsty, talk to us a little bit about what that stigma is like and your experience. I mean, you were saying there about, you know, being a mum and holding down a job and all the rest of it, but what was it like?
I can talk about my own stigma, and I presently volunteer in the prison system, in the criminal justice system, and also the people in the community who cannot stop drinking, because some people can't stop drinking, sadly. And the stigma is great, not just for the person who has the alcohol dependency, but for their family, because there's not enough education. It's like, just stop. Why are you drinking so much? Don't drink as much. We're not even saying take a break. We're saying try and drink less. We can't drink less. So it's pretty much impossible. I was drinking 3 bottles of wine at least a night. You know, some nights it was more than that. And the stigma, I was lying to my then partner, I was taking mental health days off work. I never once said it was because of my alcohol issues, because the fear around that. Most people who stop drinking have thought about it for years, and when we've thought about it for years, we think about every mistake we've made when we've been drinking, everything that we believe that makes us a bad person, and the thought of even bringing that to the surface or mentioning that, it just becomes so scary, so terrifying. Since I stopped drinking, I left my corporate role, and I now speak in corporate businesses and talking about how they can support people around not drinking. And there's so much that we can do as people who do drink. We can support people when they say they don't want to drink. We can stop having the drinking culture in work. We can stop expecting people to go for after-work drinks. We can make it the norm that we do things where we're not drinking. That removes the shame, and it allows people to say, I might be able to mention actually that I prefer to socialise when I'm not drinking, and I prefer to do things when alcohol is not there. I've been invited to a number of wellbeing events in the past 6 months, and every one of them had alcohol at them. That blows my mind. There is no place for alcohol in wellness conversations. Scotland has this massive, terrible stereotype as being problem drinkers, but there is a movement at the moment, the Sober Curious movement, the Insta Sober movement. People are talking about it more, and the more we talk about something, the more we shed light on it, the easier it is to remove that stigma. I talk about it quite openly now because I know the difference it's impacted my whole family. As I say, I work in the criminal justice system occasionally, and I can see the pressure it has on that. The more we talk about it, and it's so difficult for some, the more that we can make a change in this country.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for that. Really, really interesting take on it as well, Kirsty. Thanks so much for being open enough and sharing your experiences. That was Kirsty Mulcahy there, founder of Soberbuzz Scotland, and Isla Hashimadi, Director of Research and Public Affairs at Alcohol Change UK. It is 10:54.
The world number one. Swiatek gives the ball a couple of bounces.
Nadal serves at deuce.
It's a lovely little lob from Alcaraz.
Slice forehand from Williams.
They are on fire.
It's outstanding defence from Murray.
In steps Djokovic. He's trying to win it here.
Every epic moment.
Oh, that's too good.
Don't miss a thing from Wimbledon. With live coverage of all 18 courts. Watch on iPlayer. Listen on BBC Sounds.
You're listening to Mornings with me, Connie McLaughlin, on BBC Radio Scotland. Keep your texts coming in, by the way, for the Court of Karen, 80295. This is it, just to refresh your memory.
My daughter says she doesn't want me to walk her down the aisle, so I'm refusing to pay for the wedding. Am I being unreasonable?
What do you think? 80295, text me. And yeah, we're going to be speaking to Natalie Rushdie about honouring her friend, the late Dame Deborah James, with a new charity single that's on the way after 11 o'clock this morning. But earlier, I don't know if you heard me talking about this, we're talking about K-pop, right? It's grown and grown, not just in the UK, but worldwide. And at the weekend, the girl band Blackpink became the first Korean act to headline a major UK festival in Hyde Park. So Korean music seems to be taking over. Let me speak to music journalist Taylor Glasby. Morning, Taylor.
Good morning.
You saw Blackpink on Sunday night. How were they?
They were amazing, as usual.
Right. Tell me, what? First of all, for people that don't know what K-pop is, explain it to us.
So K-pop is just short for Korean pop music. It's been around since the early 90s. It's seen a real uptick in the past kind of 5 to 6 years in the West, but it's just, it is essentially what it says on the tin. It's pop music in the Korean language.
People might think about, automatically what might come to their mind is, Gangnam Style, that kind of idea. Was that the start of it becoming more widely available or noticed more in the UK? Or was it happening before that and we just didn't know?
I think it's been happening around the world for a really long time. Obviously, it has been less visible, I guess, in the mainstream, but it has been a presence for a really long time. Gangnam Style was definitely where things really kicked off. It became like the first K-pop video to hit 1 billion views on YouTube. So yeah, I mean, that, because I guess like what you call a gateway into K-pop for many people, at least in terms of just knowing the terminology itself. But I would say it's taken a little longer, around the kind of 2018 mark, before things really kicked off.
Taylor, explain to us just how big a deal this was, Blackpink headlining at BST Hyde Park. What does that mean, and what's that saying about where we are with K-pop at the moment?
I mean, it was a big deal just because K-pop has just not been a presence in the British charts outside of Blackpink or BTS, and it has certainly not been a presence at any of the UK festivals. And we know how much the UK loves a festival. We know how much places like Glastonbury open up the world stages. So there have been Korean acts, but they haven't been that kind of idol presence. So it is a real turning point. I think, there was 65,000 people at Hyde Park. It earned rave reviews across the board. So I think this is a real kind of wake-up call for festival curators to say, actually, this is really popular. This is a mainstream thing, and we can see people really engaging. I mean, I was standing in the audience, and the amount of kind of age differentiation, there was like little kids, there was like their dads dancing along, there was like girls and guys of all ages, just with their light sticks and just enjoying it. So I think it's gone from being like, oh, it's only a few people that really like this, it's only some hardcore fans, into saying, no, this is something like a huge amount of people can enjoy.
Are there other genres that we might see? K-rock, K-rap, that sort of thing?
There was actually a K-rock band at Hyde Park as well. They're called The Rose, and they were playing earlier. They're kind of more, I guess you could kind of compare them a bit like The Killers, a bit Coldplay, and they were getting a really good reception as well for people who just didn't even know who they were. But, people were really enjoying it. It's music, of course, is going goes beyond language. So as long as the tune's good, the melody's there, there's a hooky chorus, there's no real barrier to entry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Actually, I wonder what it is about Korean music that seems to be really sort of hitting the right note, if you pardon the pun. But do you reckon, just briefly, we'll be seeing more of this over the next few years at festivals?
If festival promoters know what's good, yes, I would absolutely hope so. I mean, the spectacle itself, especially if you saw Blackpink, I mean, they brought their A game. So, yeah, it's definitely on the rise. Fingers crossed.
They brought their K game.
Yes, they did. I missed that one.
Work with me here, Taylor. Come on. Nice to speak to you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
That was Taylor Glaspie there, music journalist, talking about K-pop and the rise. Are you a fan of it? 80295, let me know. Listen, lots more to come after the news this morning at 11 o'clock. To BBC Radio Scotland with me, Connie McLaughlin. Still to come before 12, we're going to get a verdict on this.
My daughter says she doesn't want me to walk her down the aisle, so I'm refusing to pay for the wedding. Am I being unreasonable?
Text your thoughts, 80295. We're going to be hearing what you say, the jury out there shortly. And as the co-leaders of the Scottish Greens snub an invite to the celebrations for the King and Queen, will you be switching on or turning off to everything that's happening in Edinburgh today? We will discuss that before 12. And yeah, we're going to be speaking to Natalie Rushdie about honouring her friend, the late Dame Deborah James, with a new charity single. That's a little bit of it there. Plus, we're asking, how do we engage boys and young men in sex education?
All the conversations that matter.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
Well,
Now it is that time of the morning that we all rise, because the Court of Cavan is back in session as we hear the verdict on this week's conundrum. Now, we were looking at the tradition of dads. What are you laughing at?
Oh, God. I'm laughing at, I've got a cup of tea. Listen, I think I was dehydrated earlier. Sorry, I'm just laughing at the mix I made earlier. So sorry, carry on.
No,
carry on, Connie. We're not laughing at you.
Don't mind me. Don't mind me. You're just, doing
I'm
my
laughing
job.
at you. No, I'm not.
Right, we were looking at the tradition of dads walking down the aisle or daughters down the aisle, right? But as ever, the final verdict does lie with you, the jury. So let's remind everyone of the conundrum in case they missed it a little bit earlier, right? Here we go.
I'm a 48-year-old man and my 19-year-old daughter has always been an independent thinker, which I've always appreciated. However, she recently got engaged and decided she doesn't want me to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. She argues that her mother and I don't own her, therefore we have no right to give her away. I feel hurt by this because we never treated her like an object or piece of property. Rather, we've tried our best to provide her with a wonderful life. Her stance seems extreme to me, and despite discussions, she's refusing to budge on this issue. I respect her choices, but I feel she's disregarding our feelings completely. As a response, I told her that if she's insistent on this stance, she can pay for her own wedding. Am I being unreasonable?
Is he being unreasonable? Right, so say the public?
Do you know the funny thing is, and we've got a lot of texts in this, the majority, actually all but two, are anonymous. And I wonder if that's on purpose, that people are just not leaving their names. It's funny that, because I've never had that before. Normally people are very happy to leave their names. Do you know, and it's weird. I'm going to read this one out first. Don't know who it's from. And I think it's how I felt. I agree with both. They start.
Doesn't majorly surprise me.
There are arguments on both sides, but I will say my dad didn't walk me down the aisle in 1988, and it didn't bother anyone. It was down to my choice, as I wasn't very traditional. My dad contributed to the wedding, although we did have to manage it on a tight budget, but it was a lovely day overall, and I have no regrets. Love the programme and the debates. So I think that's how I was a bit earlier on. Oh, my head's kind of in a bit of a mush here. I'm sort of with both sides, but it's weird, isn't it? You can't pick and choose, and I think that's a difficult thing. Somebody else is saying, my 3-year-old granddaughter walked my daughter down the aisle. Isn't that lovely? It was beautiful. I also feel you can walk somebody down the aisle without giving away.
Yeah, I mean, I know my opinion on this doesn't matter in any way, shape or form. I'm not really supposed to have an opinion, but I agree with that person.
Right. I'm just going to say, I think you're a little
opinion.
Anyway. Yes. Somebody else says, oh no, this is Carol from Straven. We were in a similar situation 30 years ago. My sister wanted her friend to walk her down the aisle. Our dad was disappointed, but accepted that decision, still paid for all the wedding. However, when it came to the day itself, right at the last minute, she changed her mind and needed her daddy by her side. Oh, I think I might well up.
I know, I felt a wee bit emotional there.
Everyone happy. Oh, thanks, Carol. That's lovely. That's lovely. Someone else is saying, don't know who is. I am getting married next year. Me and my fiancé are paying for the whole event. In the case you've mentioned, I don't think she can have her cake, nice pun, and eat it. I think they are both being a little naive, selfish, childish. If you want to make all the calls, pay for it yourself. If you want to rely on parents for the day, you need to take their feelings and beliefs into account. Equally, if the dad has already said he would support the wedding financially, you shouldn't start putting conditions on there just because he doesn't agree with the arrangements. It's all true. It's all true. Myself and fiancé made the decision early on that that we would pay for the wedding ourselves and have the day we wanted, knowing there may be interference if we were relying on anyone else. All we have to do is set a budget and stick to it. I think that's really good text, and I think that's good.
It sums up a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does actually. And one here, the whole concept of, in brackets, traditionally, of a man giving away a woman to another man is outdated, as is the Mrs. angle and taking your husband's surname. I hate
don't
getting
get me
cards.
started on that.
I know, it's weird, isn't it? How many blokes take women's surnames? I don't think.
I did actually float that as an idea to my husband.
Would you know my sister's husband? Let me just get this right. Martin, he took on my sister's name. Mackenzie, and actually they're divorced now, but then he now has remarried and his new wife's taken on Mackenzie and his daughter's a Mackenzie, so isn't that weird? That's kind of like, yeah, and they live in France. Here we are. Lots of information. I hate getting cards anyway, and letters addressed to Mr. and Mrs. husband's name. If I had my time over, I wouldn't do either again. Do you think it's not too late to change her name now? Maybe that might cause problems. If her father can't accept her perspective over her own needs, that's very sad. I suspect he's more worried about what other people think. You know what? I think you've nailed it there. If I was his daughter, I would be saying, that's fine, we will pay rather than acquiesce to his outdated views. It's her big day and she shouldn't be forced into doing something she clearly feels strongly about.
Is this breaking tradition? Isn't it the idea of thinking that things changing and growing and developing makes sometimes can be difficult for people to deal with?
Yeah. So that
Any
is
more?
Yeah. The father will likely have supported his daughter financially for most of her life. So entirely his choice should he wish to pay for the wedding or not. True. The dad should absolutely pay and be the bigger person and respect his daughter's views, even though he may be hurt. Parents get their feelings hurt by their kids all the time. True. It's part of the job description.
I know.
All these texts, but from people that we don't know who they're from.
Yeah. So wise as well. If you had left your name, we could have just told the nation about how wise you are as well.
Exactly. If she is so independent, then she would want. She would want to pay for her own wedding. Surely, Dad paying for it all is such an old-fashioned idea, a bit like a dowry.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, well, I think we've suitably put the wrongs to right here.
God, I'm still confused.
I know, so
but
am I,
you know
to be
what?
honest. But we need to move on, so them's the breaks.
All right, I can take a hint.
Good to speak to
I'm
you.
out of here.
See you soon.
Bye, cheery.
Karen Mackenzie there. Thanks so much for everyone and getting in touch with us on 80295. Coming up after me at midday, it's Lunchtime Live, and Lucy White is with us to tell us what's coming up. Morning.
Hello, Connie. Morning to you. Yes, Vary isn't here right now because she's just getting all set up. She is going to be doing the programme live from St Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh.
Lucky her.
Yeah, where it's all happening today. The King's Scottish coronation, if you will, is going to be presented with the Scottish crown jewels, and there's a people's procession down the Royal Mile. So she's going to be there for us this lunchtime, soaking up all the atmosphere, speaking to lots of experts, reflecting on the monarchy's position in Scotland too. So she'll be live there. I'll be back here in Glasgow, bringing you the rest of today's news, including the latest from the UK COVID inquiry, where Scotland's former Chief Medical Officer, Catherine Calderwood, she breached her own lockdown rules. I'm sure lots of people will remember that. She's been appearing at the UK COVID inquiry today, so some interesting things coming out of that. The latest from Ukraine, and I know you've been talking about it too, 75th birthday of the NHS. Today we'll be reflecting on where it could go over the next 75 potentially.
Yes, I'll look forward to that. I'm also going to be keen to find out if Vary can give me any tips on how I get home. Because I'm in
good
Edinburgh
luck
right
with
now.
that. Yes, I think just stay put is probably the best advice.
Well, I'm back on tomorrow again, so maybe I don't know.
I'll just jump on the end of the procession. I'm pretty sure that's not allowed, but you could give it a go.
Well, if you don't hear from me tomorrow, you know that's happened. Right, have a good
Best of
show.
luck. Bye now.
See ya. That's Lucy White with Vary from 12 o'clock at Lunchtime Live. Right, it is 18 minutes after 11.
Previously on Breaking the News.
I think it might be the COVID inquiry.
What have you made of the testimony so far?
I couldn't believe it was 3 hours long. If I wanted to see someone phone it in for 3 hours, I would have went to Guns N' Roses the other night.
Scotland's topical panel show with Des Clark.
How prepared are you should it happen again?
This is why I've bulked up to 26.5 stone, right? I'm either going to starve or I'm going to shave myself like a doner kebab and feed myself. Do you know what I
mean? Breaking the News. Listen now on BBC Sounds.
And catch the next programme Friday from 1:30 on BBC Radio Scotland.
Right, it's Connie McLaughlin with you until midday. Still to come, as the co-leaders of the Scottish Greens snub an invite to celebrations for the King and Queen, will you be switching on or turning off? That's what Lucy was just saying there. So we're going to be speaking about it later in the programme, but we're also going to be speaking about that just shortly. So stick around for that if you can. And yeah, we're going to be speaking to Natalie Rushdie about honouring her friend, the late Dame Deborah James, with her new charity single. Plus, how do we engage boys and young men in sex education?
Get in touch with BBC Radio Scotland.
You can call our free phone number on 08085 92 95 00. Text 80295. Standard message rates apply.
This is BBC Radio Scotland.
Yeah, it can be a tricky thing to do that, trying to just set the right tone to connect with boys when it comes to sex education. We'll discuss that later. Some more music. This is Gold now.
Set adrift on the vessel. Baby, you send me Baby, you send me set adrift on the vessel. Baby, you send me Baby, you send me set adrift on the vessel. Baby, you send me Baby, you send me set adrift on the vessel. Baby, you send me Baby, you send me set adrift on memory bliss of you. Oh, baby, you send me, 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 baby, you send me set adrift on memory bliss of you. Baby, you send me.
Sneaking suspicion there's probably quite a bit of gold going to be on show this afternoon in Edinburgh with King Charles. Is taking part in a service of Thanksgiving for Royal Week. He's going to be presented with the Honours of Scotland, the nation's crown jewels at St Giles Cathedral. However, the royal visit has received a bit of a frosty reception from some. The Greens party leaders Patrick Harvie and Lorna Slater have both declined their invitation to be there, saying it is a tiresome spectacle. So, what is it about this week-long event? What is it about? And will you be switching on or switching off? Let's speak to royal commentator Ian Lloyd. Morning, Ian.
Hello, morning.
We've also got royal family supporter Graham Parkhill. Morning, Graham.
Hello there.
Yeah, and you can also get your thoughts to me in on this as well. 80295. Are you interested? Are you not interested? Let me know what you think about that as well. Right, Ian, first of all, let me come to you. What's happening this week?
Well, the King is, for the first time, presiding at the Royal Week, where he's officially in residence at the Palace of Holyrood, and it's his kind of official welcome, I think, to Scotland, and it's kind of gone full circle from last September when, of course, we had the late Queen's funeral at St Giles, and now we're kind of celebrating the new reign in the same place. So it's a sort of very symbolic week, and marks the close association with the King and the royal family and Scotland.
What's it going to look like? So what will people expect to see?
What, this afternoon?
Yeah.
Well, it's similar to the coronation in London, apart from the fact that the King won't be wearing his robes and crowned in the same way as he was there, but it's like you said, there's a lot of pageantry, and also what's interesting with Charles, I think, as opposed to the late Queen, is he's trying to modernise it. So we've got this procession, people's procession of 100 people representing charities and public service, which is a different way. I mean, normally we just have dukes and aristocrats and so on, but I think he's trying to make it more inclusive. And also, he's commissioned 6 new pieces of music. He's obviously interested in the arts, and so he's trying to develop, sort of put his mark on this sort of ceremony, I think. We've got him and obviously Camilla and the Duke and Duchess of Rothesay, Charles, William and Kate, to make the Fab Four, and of course the Princess Royal, who's amazingly got 5 engagements today, if you include the ceremony this afternoon.
So she's busy. busy old afternoon. Just going back to the King, Ian.
Yeah.
How significant do you think Scotland is to him? We touched on this a little bit before the coronation, but from what you understand, and how important is this part of this process to him?
Scotland is essential to him because I think Scotland keeps him sane. The reason I say that is because royalty gets a lot of pressure, and you can't. The late Queen, for instance, you can't holiday abroad as such without a lot of commotion, a lot of press, and a lot of attention. So the late Queen, went to Balmoral. They call it the Big Rest, the courtiers call it, and she once said it's great to be in the same place where you can sleep in the same bed for 6 weeks. She would go and she would get a sort of spring in a step, and people said the skin, everything. She was just really relaxed after several weeks there. Charles is the same. I mean, he went there after the death of the Queen Mum. He went after the death of both Philip and the Queen. He finds it recharges the batteries. It's perfect for him because he's a man that likes to contemplate, so he can go off and walk, he can paint, and most importantly, they're respected and left alone in the vicinity of Ballater and Balmoral and Crathy and so on. So they can, just sort of regroup and then come back. But it's their kind of main holiday, and has been really since the time of Queen Victoria. I think it's very, very important for them to, for their health and well-being, I think.
Yeah. And Graham, for you, just thinking about what Patrick Harvey and Lorna Slater have said and their decision not to take the invitation up to be part of celebrations, what do you make of that?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Graham, on you go.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea that they're not there, to be perfectly honest. I just think if they don't want to be there, then let somebody who does want to be there take the seat. I mean, Patrick Harvey, the King was doing more influencing worldwide environmental policy before Patrick Harvey was even born. The Greens have 1.3% of the constituency vote, 8.1% of the regional vote. These people are on the fringes of politics in Scotland. They've got a place at the government table which, in my view, is unwarranted. So if they don't want to be there, that's fine. I mean, grown-up politicians will be there. Childish politicians who can't actually be there for their country and see more than the end of their own nose. If they don't want to be there, fine. let them stay away.
Well, we also have to say that as part of this discussion, it's important to get all views. And we did have someone who was going to be taking the alternative view to what you have to say, Graham, but they couldn't join us this morning. So we'd love to hear from you if that is the case. 80295, feel free to get in touch with us. And I guess that's the whole point, isn't it, Graham, that people have the right to make the choice that they want to and they feel comfortable with. But that aside, how important do you think the Royals are to the UK?
Oh, I think they're hugely important. Apart from the drama and the celebration that goes along with them, they've got a hugely influential role worldwide. They are loved worldwide. The President of France said of the late Queen, not only was she the Queen of the United Kingdom, she was our Queen too. They provide an independent and objective viewpoint for the Prime Minister or the First Minister of Scotland. And it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, whether you're young or old, or whether you're from the upper classes or the working classes. They're our royal family. They're not the royal family of England. In fact, my view is they were first and foremost the royal family of Scotland before they became the royal family of Great Britain. So I just think I love them. I think they're hugely influential on the world scene. They're a great asset for our country worldwide.
Okay.
And they're a great focus for celebration.
Yeah, and Ian, I think it's important to say as well that there are people who don't feel as passionately as Graham.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Charles, the King, will understand that. I mean, I remember one of my earliest memories was the investiture, when there was a lot of anti-monarchy feeling from Republicans in Wales, and a bomb went off on the morning of the investiture. And Charles tried to, sort of understand what was happening. He talked to demonstrators and later visits. I mean, they appreciate it goes on. I mean, I remember the late Queen going to New Zealand and having eggs thrown at her by Maoris and indigenous people who kind of had their own rights and so on. So they know this goes on all over the place, and they kind of appreciate the fact that people should have their say, and that we're not in a lockdown situation where people can't express their feelings.
Well, actually, we do have Rhiannon Spear, who is a Republican, who we've managed to get back on the line. Morning, Rhiannon.
Morning, hi there.
Thanks so much for joining us. What would you like to say in terms of what you think about is what's going on this week in Edinburgh? And I'm assuming you don't support it.
I don't support it. No, I really personally think it's a grotesque display of private wealth. I think it's completely out of touch as we're seeing a cost of living crisis in the UK and Scotland, where people are having to choose between feeding themselves and paying their bills. I think to have this happen at this time is completely out of touch. And it shows just kind of how outdated this establishment is. It needs to be, it should end now, basically.
Graham?
Oh, sorry. So I absolutely think that she's got the right to have that view. I 100% disagree with her. The King and the royal family bring far more money into our economy than they take out of it. The fact that she doesn't like the King, or in actual fact, the royal family, is neither here nor there. That's her personal view. Thankfully, it's not the view of the majority of cool, thinking, level-headed people in our country. And I cannot...
I think I'm quite cool thinking and level-headed.
Sorry, Graham. Let Rhiannon come back in just to make a final point, because we need to move on.
Thank you. I think I'm quite cool-headed and level-headed myself. What I would say is, if you think about this rationally, the institution will still be there, Buckingham Palace will still be there, Holyrood Palace will still be there, the tourists will still come. The tourists don't come to shake hands with the King. They come to see the architecture and the heritage. That will all still be there. We do not need this outdated elite that are completely out of touch with the public to still be there. They should be abolished. We should be abolishing the monarchy. King Charles should be the last King of Britain, and that should be the end of it.
Just final point to you, Ian. Listening to Rhiannon, listening to Graham, it's still very evident that there's a polarisation in this country in terms of how we move forward with this. Will the King expect to see that reflected today, I would assume?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he would be surprised if it wasn't. I mean, it's reflecting modern society, and there are people that are anti and people that are positive. I mean, the thing is, it does go in troughs and peaks. I mean, the Queen Victoria in the 1860s, republicanism was at its height. I think the worst for the royal family is disinterest in the 60s and 1960s and 70s. There was not a great deal of kind of fervent royal, sort of affection or whatever. So it does go in peaks and troughs, and I think Charles would expect it in a very diverse society that it's going to happen,
Okay, thank you to all of you. Very colourful debate, and I think one that will continue. That was Ian Lloyd, the royal commentator, Graham Parkhill is a royal family supporter, and Rhiannon Spears, who is a Republican. It is 11:34 here in BBC Radio Scotland. Now, last week marked 1 year since the passing of Dame Deborah James, the You, Me and the Big C podcast host, had incurable bowel cancer. She was only 40 years old when she died. In the 5 years between her diagnosis and her death, Deborah did all she could to raise awareness for bowel cancer and fundraise for vital research. Her friend Natalie Rushdie sang Tell Me It's Not True at her funeral, and the song has now been released as a single, with all the proceeds going to her Bowel Babe Fund for Cancer Research UK. And she's here with us to tell us about the project. Morning, Natalie.
Morning. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much. First of all, I cannot believe that we're 1 year on.
I know. I feel time has gone so quickly. She was just I feel she's almost here because her legacy still goes on. And what I've been so touched about since we've released the song on Monday, that so many people have got behind us, so many people have downloaded and streamed the record. It's been quite incredible, the support we have, and for her.
Tell us what she was like as your friend, because we know her from, what we see on social media and latterly what we've seen in the media and the news and everything else. But what was she like?
She was kind of what she was like on social media. She had such a high for life. She had a zest for life. She had a zest for joy. She was so supportive of her friends and family, and she just didn't want other people to suffer like she did. So her sort of campaigning, she sort of did on screen and off screen. So the last thing she'd say to you when she had a conversation, she'd be like, check your poo. And that would be, cheerio, bye, check your poo. And that would be the last thing. So she constantly fought to the end.
What about the song then, and how did it come about that you were singing at the funeral?
So Deborah and I have been friends for 7 years, and we were introduced through our husbands who actually lived together when they were 20. And I said, Deborah, please, can I do anything for you? Can I, I saw her at Ascot. We both promised each other that if we survived sepsis, we had sepsis at the same time, that if we survived it, we'd go to Ascot. And that was the last outing she had. And we had a wonderful afternoon. And she said, Natalie, please, will you sing at my funeral? Tell me it's not true. And then a couple of months later, her parents, Heather and Alistair, said, would you ever record the song for her? So that's sort of how it came about.
And you got to perform it at the Abbey Road Studios. What was that like?
It was a bittersweet moment, because at one hand, obviously being a musician, it was wonderful, and you sort of dream of performing at Abbey Road Studios. And then on the other hand, I just thought Deborah would have she would have adored this. She would have loved it. She would have been dancing with a glass of wine. So it was one of those things where it was amazing, but at the same time, it was incredibly sad and an emotional day.
What about the finished product then? What was that like to hear all your hard work?
Yeah, the finished product definitely had a lot of tears when I saw the video for the first time, and I was really sort of, I really wanted the video to be her dancing, because first of all, she would have loved the fact that she was in a music video dancing, but it just made me cry seeing the videos of her dancing with her son and her daughter and her husband, and I just thought, gosh, that was Deborah. So
and just even a year later, thinking about that and how hard she worked to try and raise awareness of this, it's still so fresh in people's minds. So what's the response been like to the single so far?
The response has been absolutely incredible. I've just been in awe, even when I last saw her, and she was so incredibly unwell at this point, that she was still fighting. This was a week before she passed away, and she was like, I'm doing this and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this with this campaign, and we've got to stop, help, raise funds and raise money for research and scientific studies. It was just incredible that she just kept on going. So the response has been incredible because she united a group of people that had never spoken to before. She always said, you know, I have the brown cancer, which isn't attractive to talk about, but we all said that we would carry on from her. And then it's sort of grown last week, Prince William put his support behind the single. And I was lucky enough yesterday to speak to Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales, yesterday at Wimbledon. And I thanked her personally for everything she had done to support the single and her husband. And she said, of course, it was really important for Prince William to get behind and support the song. So it's sort of been a shocking week, but then at the same time, I just feel this is just Deborah. This song has been Deborah-fied.
Did she say why? Did she say why it was so important for the Prince to get behind it? I know obviously they met each other before she died.
She didn't say exactly why, but I think from my perspective, she, you know, they're both in their 40s. They're young. They're both the same age. They have, you know, 2 children. I mean, I know the Royal Highnesses have 3, but I think you couldn't not be affected by her story because she was 40 years old and she was full of life and love and you know, she was wonderful. She was a teacher and she had a sort of normal life, and then she just sort of changed the way we talked about cancer. So I think I don't know anyone that hasn't been affected by her story. So it was very touching, and it was really nice to know that they still put their support behind her.
What do you think it is, Natalie, and it might be all those things that you just mentioned, that was different about Deborah, that many people have sadly gone through a very similar experience, but what was it about her story and her, you know, individually that you know, was something that captured the imagination of so many people?
Well, I think firstly, because she was so young and, you know, bowel cancer, if detected early enough, is curable. But because, you know, people thought you can't have bowel cancer, you're too young. So I think that was one of the main things that sort of amplified her story. But also I think it was just her. She was completely mad and crazy, and, you know, no one else would dress up like a poo or run numerous marathons dressed up as a poo. You know, talking about bowel cancer, she had no sort of, you know, it was taboo talking about it. My grandmother passed away 20 years ago from bowel cancer because no one talked about it. I mean, I wasn't even told she had bowel cancer till years later when I had sort of, you know, I was older, and I said, why did Nana die? And they said, oh, she had bowel cancer. I said, why did no one tell me? It was the whole conversation was, oh, no, you don't talk about it.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah. So I think that was different about Deborah.
Listen, Tell Me It's Not True by Natalie Rusty will be available now on all major streaming download platforms, actually, including Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon Music, TikTok, you name it, YouTube, more. 100% of the proceeds will go to the Bill Babe Fund for Cancer Research UK. All the best with it, Natalie. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about it.
Thank you. And thank you so much. And it's wonderful to speak to BBC Radio Scotland. I was born in Falkirk, so it's lovely to be aired.
Oh, well, thanks so much for coming on. The people of Falkirk will be delighted to hear that, I'm sure. All the best. Natalie Rusty there, jazz singer and friend of the late Dame Deborah James. And remember, details of organisations offering information and support with cancer are available at bbc.co.uk/action line, or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information. This is the number 0800 0560 190. Now it is just coming up to 11:43 in BBC Radio Scotland. We can head to Wimbledon. We speak to our tennis correspondent, Keridine Itzan. Morning, Keridine.
Hi, Connie. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thanks. And more importantly, how are you after Andy's performance yesterday? Tell us all about it. What was it like?
Yes, I think we're all quite satisfied, aren't we? Stress-free, straight sets. Yeah. And especially the last 2 sets, I mean, you know, basically cruising through for the loss of just a game in the last couple of sets. Nice stuff from Andy Murray. He said he was a bit nervous, and he had a nice little bit of banter at the end of the match with the great Roger Federer. 8 titles for him, just the 2 for Andy Murray. He's doing his best to try and catch him up, but it's never really going to happen. But it was nice to see the great man, Mr. Federer, back on centre court as well. He got just as good a reception as Andy Murray, I think. And yeah, I think really he wouldn't have asked for much more Andy Murray on and off court with minimum fuss, through to the second round very comfortably, played some quite nice stuff as the match went on, and I think he was reasonably happy. When we spoke to him afterwards, he says, look, there's things I can improve on, but as debut matches go in championships and majors, it was absolutely fine, and he knows it's going to be a step up tomorrow when it's going to be either Dominic Thiem or Stefanos Tsitsipas, the former US Open champion, the latter the Greek 5th seed here. They play later today. Their match was caught up in all the rain delays yesterday, so Thiem took the first set. It's chaos in the schedule today, Connie. There's been more rain this morning, so no play on the outside courts yet. They should have kicked off at 11. I think the latest estimate is going to be maybe 12:30. Play on the outside courts will get underway. Number one court and centre, of course, have the roof, so they are unaffected. We should give honourable mention to Cameron Norrie as well, through in 4 sets last night against Machac, the Czech, so he was in pretty good form afterwards as well. So both Scotland's main entrants in the singles very happy, through to the second round tomorrow, and we'll get a look at Mr Djokovic again and the Iga Swiatek, the women's world number one, later today. So an absolutely packed schedule here today, but just a practice session over on the Arongi Pavilion for Mr Murray later on.
Right, we will speak to you same time tomorrow, and hopefully the schedule's cleared up a wee bit after that rain delay yesterday. That was Kerry Dinitsan, BBC Scotland tennis and senior sports reporter. Right, it is 11:45.
Join me, Mark Stephen, as I visit Holmmuir Ukrainian Chapel in Dumfries in Galloway.
Ukrainians traditionally stand when Mass is being celebrated, although we've put benches in now because we're all getting on.
I discover why a community came to live and work around the site of the chapel following World War II.
I am the son of one of the Ukrainians who was brought to this camp as a prisoner of war in 1947.
He had to say goodbye to his mother. Never saw her again, you see.
And find out why the small building has become an important focal point for a new generation.
I feel this is a really Ukrainian place.
Our story. Listen now on BBC Sounds.
Coming up before 12 here on BBC Radio Scotland, how do we engage boys and young men when it comes to sex education? That is on the way shortly.
Catch up on the conversation. Listen via the BBC Sounds app.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
Before we do that, and we go into quite an important conversation about just how you connect with younger men, let's get a bit of Paolo Nutini. This
Thought I'd never find me someone to stop the rain and bring me some sun. 'Cause every time I found me somebody, they'd get what they wanted and soon be gone. You're the first in my life to show me a sign of true love. Just when we get started, you wanna call it off. No, no, don't you dare stop there, 'cause I'm right in the middle of falling in love.
And sex education lessons must engage boys and young men in order to tackle a scourge of sexual harassment and violence in schools, according to a group of MPs. The inquiry by the Women and Equalities Committee heard relationships, sex and health education was less applicable to boys than to girls. So, what's the picture in Scotland when it comes to sex education? How can lessons engage boys best? Joining me now to chat a little bit more about this is Corey McLean, who's the co-founder of the Three Sisters Consultancy and one of the co-writers for the 2019 Scottish RSAP curriculum. That's the National Resource for Relationships, Sexual Health and Parenthood. Morning, Corey.
Morning. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. We've also got John Mellis, broadcaster and dad of 2 teenagers. Morning, John.
Morning, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. We've also, alongside us, is Tim Watson, who's an educational and child psychologist. Thanks for coming on, Tim.
Good morning.
An important conversation this, right? But I think it's best to say, if you've got children maybe listening right now and maybe you think, right, this is a great opportunity to spark a wee bit of an interesting conversation in your household, brilliant, right? But if you don't and you think, maybe this is not so suitable for younger youngsters, you might want to come back in about 10 minutes time. Okay, so just that's where we're at right now. Corey, probably the best place to start was with you.